This lesson we're going to look at creating Windows virtual machine through Powershell. Quite a lot to this, so you'll probably be looking at this lesson a couple of times through, maybe one time through without doing anything hands-on, and then another time follow along and pause the video. You can see we're in the GUI and there's no virtual machines present. So we're going to create a VM using Powershell. For this purpose, we go to Cloud Shell, and we have to choose the Powershell up here. Click on Restart, and after the restart it will load the Powershell. Here you can see the Powershell has been successfully loaded at the command prompt there. After that, type clear. You'll look at the existing VM images for the South India region. Here's the command to do it. Get Azure RM VM image publisher. This will return a list of image publishers with specified location South India, and you can see all the images that exist in the South Indian region. Here we'll use Microsoft Server. Now we'll look at how to list the images with specified output parameters. We're trying to install Microsoft Windows Server. So I'll run a command that filters only the Microsoft Windows Server offerings. You run the command Azure RM VM image offer, the location, and then the publisher name. This command will list out only filtered publisher's name that belongs to Microsoft Windows Server. After that, press enter, and here we can see the three offers that exist in this region. Now we'll see how to filter both the publisher and offer names in that specified region. For that, we have to run the command get Azure RM VM image SKU, the location, publisher name, and offer. After that, press enter. So these are all the existing Windows Server editions that exist in our particular region. We'll use the 2016 data center server. And we've opted for the 26 data center server just here. Now we'll see what the existing VM sizes exist at this particular location. For that, we have to run the command get Azure RM VM size and location. These are all the existing VM sizes which we can use to build our Windows Server. Here I'll use basic A2. So we've chosen the Windows Server, the version, and then the VM size. Now we'll see how to create a virtual machine in the Powershell. For that, first we have to create a resource group name you run the command new Azure RM resource group name, and then location. After that, press enter. We'll see that the resource group has been successfully created. We can also verify whether the resource group has been created or not in the GUI. Go to the resource groups, and here we can see that the resource group has been successfully created. After that, we'll see how to create a virtual machine. Before creating the VM, we need to create the subnet virtual network. Also the public IP address, network interface card, and network security group. So let's look at creating the subnet first of all. For this, the command is the subnet config new Azure RM virtual network subnet config name and then address prefix. After that, press enter. This will create a new subnet with the name my subnet. So we've successfully created the subnet here. After creation of the subnet, you'll have to create the virtual network. For that, we have to run the command vnet new Azure RM virtual network resource group name and location. You've got the name of the resource group, location, address prefix, subnet, the subnet config. After that, press enter to proceed further. Here you can see that the virtual network has been successfully created. Now we'll see whether or not it exists in the GUI. For that, click More Services and search for Virtual Network. We can see the option there has appeared. You can see that my VNet has been successfully created under the resource group. This is the way to validate the creation of the virtual network. Okay, we have to create the public IP address next. For that, we've pasted in the command pip new Azure RM public IP address, the resource group name, location, allocation method, and then the name. After that, press enter. The output object of this type will be modified, so you may have a different option when you come to do it. You can see the public IP address has been created. Now we'll see whether the public IP exists in the GUI or not. Click on More Services and search for public IP address. Here we can see that my public IP address has been successfully created for the resource group. If you want to see the details, just click on my public IP address. This is the IP address that has been assigned for this public IP address. After the creation of the public IP address, we have to create the network interface card. For that, run the command nic new Azure RM network interface and resource group name. Location, name, subnet ID and public IP address. After that, press enter. So the virtual network interface has been successfully created. Now we'll check whether this virtual interface card exists or not in the GUI. Click on More Services and search for Network Interface Card. Click on Network Interface, and you can see that my NIC has been successfully created for the resource group. If you want to see the details, just click on My NIC. You can see the private IP address and public IP address that are assigned to this network interface card. After that, we have to create security group rules. Here I'll create a security group rule for the port 3389. Long command here, the NGS rule, new Azure network security rule config. And then you can see the output below, the name of the security group, the protocol, direction, priority, source address prefix, source address range, destination address prefix. And then destination port range is 3389, which should be used for RDP. Access will be allow. After that, press enter. This will create a new rule for RDP port 3389. After that, I'll create one more rule for port 80 that can be used to work on the web server. For that, we have to run the command nsg rule web new Azure RM network security rule config. So same command as before. You see we're just it's TCP and we're looking at destination port 80. You can press enter there and you've successfully created two rules for the security group. Now we'll create a security group for this virtual machine. For that, we have to run the following command: nsg new Azure RM network security group, the resource group name, location, the name and security rules. Here we have the security rules that we created earlier. After that, press enter. The new security group has been successfully created. Now we'll check whether this security group has actually existed in the GUI. Back to More Services and search for Network Security Groups this time. Here we can see that the My Network Security Group has been created for this resource group. If you want to see the details, just click on the that My Security Group. These are all the rules, and we can also see the two rules have been added previously. Now we have to add the virtual network to this subnet. Set Azure RM virtual network subnet config. the name, virtual network, network security group, and the address prefix. After that, press enter. And we can see that we've added the network security group to the subnet in the virtual network. After that, we have to update the virtual network. For that, we run the command set Azure RM virtual network and the virtual network alias name. After that, press enter. This will update the virtual network. So we've successfully updated the virtual network. After that, we'll create a virtual machine. First, we have to create credentials for that virtual machine. For that, we have to run the command cred equals get credential. This will set the username and password for the administration of the virtual machine. After that, press enter. And here we'll have to give the username, and I'll specify it as Callion P. And after that, enter the password. Okay, we've successfully created the admin account. Now we have to create the initial configuration for the virtual machine. Run the command VM new Azure RM VM config, the VM name and the VM size. VM name is WinVM and the size is basic A2. After that, press enter. We've completed the initial configuration for the Windows system. After that, we have to add the operating system information to the VM. Pasted in the command here, set VM set Azure RM VMO VM operating system. So you've got your virtual machine, Windows, computer name, credential, provisional VM agent, and enable auto update. After that, press enter. We've successfully added the operating system image to the virtual machine. After that, we add the image information to the VM. We've already selected the VM image previously. So for that, we run the command VM set Azure RM VM source image. Got the publisher name, the VM, the offer, SKUS, and then version. Here the publisher name is Microsoft Windows Server. You can see 2016-Data Center, version latest. After that, you can press enter. And we've successfully added image information to the virtual machine. After that, we add the operating system disk settings to the VM config. Run the command VM set Azure RM VM disk. You see the VM name, disk size in GB, create option and caching. After that, press enter. After that, you add the network interface card for this virtual machine configuration. Run the command VM add Azure RM VM network interface, and then the VM ID. After that, press enter. This will add the network interface to the virtual machine configuration. Now we'll add the operating system disk settings to the virtual machine configuration. You run the command VM set Azure RM vmos disk. VM, the name, the disk size in GB. See the create option and the caching. After you've got all that, press enter. Now we'll create the virtual machine with the virtual machine configuration settings that we created earlier. Run the command new Azure RM VM resource group name, location and VM. After that, press enter. It may take some time to create this virtual machine. In the GUI, you can see the status of the virtual machine is creating. So it'll take a little bit of time to create the virtual machine. And you'll see that it's successfully created in the Powershell there. You can validate the same thing if you go back to the GUI. Now we'll get to the public IP address of this virtual machine. For that you have to run the command get Azure RM public IP address, resource group name, select IP address. After that, press enter. Here we see the public IP address of that virtual machine. We'll now RDP to this virtual machine. You see the command here on the screen. You run this command at the command prompt to connect to the Windows VM that we created earlier. You'll have to enter the username and password. And you'll get to this window here. You have to click yes to proceed further. And you can see that the Windows virtual machine is now loading. Click yes here. We'll install the web server on this Windows machine now. Search for Powershell and select the Powershell here. You have to now run the command install Windows feature, name web server, include management tools. Press enter to proceed further. Now you can see that the web server has been successfully installed on this Windows server. Now you test whether the web server is working correctly or not on the Windows server. For that, copy the public IP address and paste it into a new tab. You can see the web server has been successfully installed because we can access it. Now we'll see a few more commands for PowerShell. Now we'll see how to get the power state of a particular VM through using PowerShell. You run the command get Azure rm VM, resource group name, and then status. After that, press enter. Here you can see the power state is running. We can now stop a virtual machine using the PowerShell. For that, you have to run the command stop Azure rm, resource group name, and then force. Here you can see that the VM status is running. By running this command, the status of the VM will be changed to stop. After that, you can press enter. And in the GUI, we can see that the status of this virtual machine is deallocating. Alright, now it's successfully been stopped. Now you can check the power state again. Same command as before. And the power state is now deallocated. You can validate this in the GUI if you need to. You can see this in the GUI now. Stopped and deallocated. Now we'll see how to start a virtual machine in PowerShell. You start Azure VM, resource group name, and then the name. After that, you can press enter. And it will start the Windows VM, which was stopped just earlier on. You can see the command has been successfully executed. And we'll check the status in the GUI. Here you can see that the Windows virtual machine status is running. And this way we can see how to start and stop the virtual machine using the PowerShell commands. You can now delete the resource group. We'll do it using the PowerShell. You run the command remove Azure rm resource group name and then force. This command will remove the resource group and their respective resources such as virtual machines, network interface, cards, etc. Execute the command. After that, press enter. Here we can see that the command has been successfully executed. Now we'll check whether the virtual machine and the resource group have been removed or not in the GUI. You just refresh the virtual machines tag and you can see virtual machine has been successfully removed. Check the resource group now while we're here. And you can see the resource group has also been removed. Alright, so we've looked at creating virtual machines using the PowerShell. We've covered a lot of ground. Hopefully you'll follow along next time and do the commands also. I'll see you on the next lecture.